Let's go to the UK, where a fascinating study out of Buckingham University has found that in 40 years' time, white British people will be a minority in their own country. Now, this was done through assessing migration levels, birth rates and death rates. You can see a graph that we'll show you in just a moment that demonstrates how right now white British people make up 73% of the population. That's the light blue line on the far left of your screen there. That's 73%. But it drops to 2050 when white British people will be 57% of the population. And then by 2063, British white people will be less than 50%. By the end of the century, they estimate that white Brits will comprise just 33.7% of the population of Britain. Now, they're being replaced by foreign-born and second-generation immigrants who now are less than 20% of the population, but in 25 years will make up fully a third of the population. And by the end of the century, researchers estimate that 6 out of 10 Brits will have been born outside the UK or have at least one immigrant parent. When it comes to religion, the statistics have shown that the Muslim population, now 7%, will be 11% in 25 years, and by the end of the century will be somewhere between 20 and 25%. With under 40s, it'll be 1 in 3 people will be Muslim. This is a massive change in the demography of the UK, and it begs the question, will the UK still be the UK, but with different people? If you've got a population that no longer agree on the symbols, the traditions, the culture or the religion, with nothing to unify them and no shared identity, are you headed for civil strife? Or, Freya, do we have leadership that can somehow navigate this and hold a country together?
And the important thing to note is that Australia is a multi-ethnic society. The West is multi-ethnic. But multi-ethnic societies only work if we're united by shared values. We have to have a common set of values and culture. And without that, things do start to crumble. And I guess the question here is essentially in 3 generations, the demographics of the Western world at large, because this is happening in Australia as well, it's happening in Canada, it's happening across the rest of Europe, have been totally changed. This is unprecedented in global history. There has never been such a rapid and profound change in the makeup of societies. And the question is, can the centre hold? What does it look like when, the country that started the Church of England, now at the end of the century, 1 in 5 people will be Muslim? Like, it does raise those serious questions around what the future of Britain is. And I also can't help but notice that there's a double standard when it comes to diversity. We don't go to Japan or China and say, you guys need to be more diverse, you need to embrace multiculturalism. But people say that about the West all the time. And I would say, no, we are very welcoming, very accepting, so much so that the country is going to look completely different.
Well, it will be unrecognisable, and that is a great shame because, it should be noted, it's not specifically about race, because this will be, people will turn this around and say, it's white supremacists to say that you're worried about there won't be enough white people in Britain. Well, the definition of white people in this study was people who don't have an immigrant parent. So you could be 3rd generation living in England, but you're Bangladeshi by, origin, and you're counted as being white in this study. So we'll be clear about that. But to say that it is bad to worry about where a country is going, and that is essentially the inference when we talk about these things, is wrong. Because why did people move to Britain in the first place? Why did people move to Australia in the first place? Because they thought it was better than the country they came from. And what has always staggered me is that people move to another country because they think it's a better place than the one they've come from, and then set about trying to make it like the country they've come from. Well, if you want to live in the country you came from, go back to the country you came from. That's where you were. Why do you seek to turn other countries into what you left? And if we don't have the culture and the various things that have made Australia and Britain and whatever great, you don't have Australia and Britain anymore. I mean, if you're talking about 20, 25% of the population being Muslim, at that point you'll be heading towards probably nearly majority Muslim in terms of the people who are religious in the country, right? Which is an insane position to be in, because once you have that mass of people, you can have serious legislative sway. And then you can start dictating, or particular parties that will form around this will start dictating that, you know, Sharia law should be instituted in places. We already have dozens and dozens of quasi-Sharia courts that exist across the UK, Sharia councils, I think they call them over there, which are doling out, you know, jurisdiction over Sharia law in the UK, not legally, but people respect these people and so they take their word for it. This sort of stuff will become law if you're not careful. That's what we're fighting for here. It's not about, oh, we don't like the colour of someone's skin or whatever. It's fundamentally the basis of a country and why it exists. And if you throw that away, what's the point of the country existing?
Well, the point you make is very good. And the astonishing thing to me is that this is news today, but back in 1968, Conservative politician Enoch Powell, he was ridiculed as a racist for saying exactly what the researchers of this study have said today. Have a listen.
Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. We must be mad. Literally mad as a nation to be permitting the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents who are for the most part the material of the future growth of the immigrant descended population. It is like watching a nation busily engaged in heaping up its own funeral pyre.